Welcome to the Power to Flourish podcast, where science meets the art of a beautiful life. I'm Dr. Andrea Line, positive psychologist, giftedness expert and coach, and modern-day spiritual godmother to brilliant, deep-feeling women. This isn't just another self-help podcast. It's a sanctuary, a sacred space to come back to yourself. Each week, we'll explore the emotional experience of gifted, sensitive women and what it means to live a life that feels as beautiful as it may look. Because flourishing isn't a luxury, it's your birthright, and your life is waiting. This is the Power to Flourish podcast. Welcome back to the Power to Flourish. I am Dr. Andrea Line, and last week, I shared how I personally enter a new year. I do it slowly, very intentionally, gently, and I very, very rarely actually do resolutions as we traditionally think of them. But I do have a lot of rhythms and rituals, which I shared in the episode last week. And actually, it was a two-part series. So I encourage you to go back and listen to those if you have not yet. But I talked about January as a threshold. It's that quiet, spacious place, if we give it space, where for me, listening matters more than momentum. And that's not to say that you can't listen in December and then hit the ground running in January and have that momentum if that's the way you like to do it. But for me, right after the holidays, I just like to take a little bit of a breath. And quite honestly, as I record this, I am recording it before I head out for an extended vacation time to be with family and to unplug completely. And so part of what I'm doing to set up a nice situation for my future self in a week or two is to record this ahead of time, have it all ready to go so I can really unplug and listen. So again, last week, it was more of a personal and practical invitation into how I reorient as one year ends and another begins. But today, I am talking about what am I actually reorienting toward? So beneath the rituals, beneath the rhythms, beneath the gentle reentry into January, there is a deeper orientation that guides all of it for me. And this episode is an introduction to the framework I work from, not just in my personal life, but it is in large part kind of the main way I am working with people. It's the lens through which I'm seeing the work I do with clients, whether that is in the past through therapy or more forward thinking, future oriented work through my coaching. And the way I think about alignment, well-being, and discernment in my own life is all about what I like to just simply call a beautiful life. And while aesthetics can play some part of that, I'm really talking about beauty as not simply aesthetics or perfection or whatever the dream life looks like on Instagram when we're scrolling, but beauty, big uppercase beauty as orientation. Choosing what is good, true, and life-giving as a compass for how we live. This way of orienting, while, in my opinion, extremely important for every human being that walks this planet, again, I'm speaking to you as a gifted, thoughtful, sensitive woman. I think it's really, really important to remind yourself of what are you orienting toward. If you are a woman who feels deeply, if you are a woman who thinks expansively, if you are a woman that is highly capable and maybe, at least sometimes, quietly overwhelmed, I really want you to lean in and listen to this episode. Because when you're wired for depth and intensity, the world can pull you into overfunctioning, over responsibility, and constant self-adjustment. And beauty, when we understand it as goodness, truth, life, excellence, it becomes a way back to yourself. becomes a way for you to get back to your true nature, the way I believe God intended it to be, the way God intended your life to be and this world to be. And sometimes in this really messy world and our imperfect, messy life, our gaze can get oriented towards things that, just aren't really helpful in the long run. And I want to say that this isn't a January only conversation, although I want to speak about it at the outset of this year because one, it's been on my mind. And two, I want to give you something that you can hang on to and think about because I think more people are naturally reflecting on their lives. They've reflected on what 2025 was. And every year, even when we do that reflection, like every year, our world is changing. And my goodness, our world, it feels like light speed change. I mean, even a year ago, the world we are stepping into in 2026 feels different than 2025. Definitely different than when we stepped into 2024. Would you agree? So I am sharing this now, but I want to just remind you, you can always tag this, like come back to it. You can come back to it in June. You can come back to it in September. If you're listening to this and it happens to be August 17th, it doesn't matter because this is evergreen. This is life. This is not New Year's resolution stuff. And I also want to just say, I don't want to be long-winded in this episode. So this is an introduction. It is sort of my foundational overview. It is not a deep dive. And my hope is to give you language and a felt sense for what it means to walk through your life wisely, not just enter a season gently. So let me just start here by saying beauty is not vanity. It's not the same thing. And I think in our world, we sometimes can get confused messaging because beauty, that word is even thrown around everywhere, right? Like in the marketing, in the stuff that we buy, like beauty, beauty, beauty. And so we can sometimes think of it sort of in this shallow way. And it can feel indulgent, or it could feel like beauty in our culture is this, I don't know, ideal, perfect thing that we're supposed to aspire to. And I just want to be clear that at least beauty, as I'm talking about it right now, is more about attention and alignment. And beauty, capital B, beauty, asks a simple but profound question. What is worthy of my attention? And when philosophers and theologians across centuries spoke of beauty, they often paired it with two other words, the good and the true. And actually, I'm going to add another word into that because maybe it all just goes together in my mind, but it's the good, the true, and the excellent. And so when I talk about a beautiful life, that is what I am talking about. I'm talking about a life that's oriented toward what is good, what is true, and what is excellent, or we could also say, encompassing all of these things, what is life-giving? Because beauty becomes, from that perspective, a kind of moral compass. And this is not a new idea. I'm certainly not teaching something that is a new idea. This is, again, like centuries. People have been talking about this, but I want to bring it to the forefront because I don't think we often talk about it when it comes to mental health. And I don't think we think about it so much sometimes when we're talking about emotional well-being and our relationships and the way we're living. Beauty as a moral compass is not necessarily, I don't think of this as like rigid or moralistic, but it's more just this deeply human compass. It helps us sense when something is aligned and when something, even if it looks impressive on the outside, even if it looks real pretty and shiny, even if it looks quote unquote excellent, is quietly draining us on the inside. So this isn't about belief systems necessarily or doctrine necessarily. This is about your discernment. You have to be so present to discern because your body knows, your nervous system knows, your spirit knows when something is truly beautiful and life-giving for you and when it's not. And beauty is often the first signal that something is either drawing us toward life or pulling us away from it. And I just want you to think about, how is that true? How do you see that that is true in your own life? That beauty is telling you, often it's like this first signal that something is drawing you toward life or pulling us away from it. So why does this feel hard sometimes? Like, probably for many of you listening, maybe even overlooked. Why do so many women tell me they feel disconnected, dulled, or unsure of what actually nourishes them anymore? It's like they've lost sense of that inner guidance system. Like they just don't really know anymore. Or when they sit and ask themselves, they feel a little empty. And a few reasons I see again and again, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, is overwhelm. When everything's urgent, nothing is sacred. So it just feels just like a big blur in front of our eyes. High responsibility, which I feel like I'm a broken record, but gifted, intelligent, sensitive women often are the ones holding it all together for their families, their teams, their communities. Another reason might be there's just too much noise now, right? There is so much noise. We've always had life, even pre-social media, with other people's opinions and advice and expectations. But now we have all of that, plus the algorithm sending us all the things that it thinks and knows we want to see. And it can just get real noisy and it's hard to know. And emotional intensity. So again, when you feel deeply, one coping strategy is to turn the volume down. But sometimes when we turn the volume down, we're turning it down on everything. And so over time, many gifted women just learn to suppress not just the overwhelm, but also their sensory, emotional, and spiritual intelligence. And they become highly functional, but they're less alive. They keep going, they keep going, they keep going. But somewhere along the way, they lose their sense of beauty as a guiding force. And the tragedy, from my perspective, isn't that they're doing something wrong. It's just that they have been surviving in environments for so long that have just never been able to honor their depth and their complexity and everything. And so this is just, it's nobody's fault, but this is what I see can often happen. So how do we return? How do we reorient? And again, I talked about sort of the process of reorienting that I do at the beginning of the year anyway, in last week's episode. But what are we reorienting? How do we return to these life-giving things? Oftentimes, it is not by adding more, although you may look at your life and again, there may be certain things that you realize bring you joy, are beautiful, are good, are true. And you look at your life and you're like, oh, I'm not making enough space for these things. So it might be adding more of those things. But I would like to offer that it's actually about discerning more wisely. So here are a few questions I come back to often, especially at the start of the new year. And you can jot these down, maybe journal on these a little later, but give yourself time to really reflect so you can practice discerning, not answering these questions based on what you think the right answer is or what you see other people doing in their life, but what is true for you. Here are 3 questions. Does this actually nourish me? Or does it mostly impress others? Or do I think it mostly impresses others and therefore I am doing it? Does this actually nourish me? The second question is, when I imagine continuing this for another year, or fill in the blank, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 3 months, but when I imagine myself continuing this, do I feel more alive or more constricted? And sense in your body what that feeling is. Like, you have a sense of like when something brings you alive, you feel it in your body. And when it feels more constricted, you can feel that in your body. And then this last question also returns you back to your body. Does this bring me into my body or pull me out of myself? Or said another way, does this ground me in a real connected sense in my body, or does it disconnect me? Does it pull me away from myself? Does it numb me out? And another thing that I find can be helpful is what I like to call living versus non-living framework. So living things expand you. They can soften you. They will bring clarity, energy, or peace, even if they're challenging. It doesn't mean peace like things aren't ever hard or, you never feel anxiety in life, but you know it's meant for you. You're meant to go forward with it. Non-living things, that's a funny way to put it, but I guess another way you could say it is things that are not life-giving, deplete you, disconnect or numb you, or they require constant effort just to maintain, like that feeling of you're rolling the boulder up the mountain and you're constantly pushing, but like you're not really getting anywhere, and you have to keep doing it, because if you don't, you're going to get smushed. So for one woman, this might mean saying no to another leadership role. Now, it doesn't necessarily, because for another woman, it might be the beautiful, excellent, good thing is saying yes to it because it's aligned. For another, it might mean returning to music or nature or more prayer. And for someone else, it might be releasing a pace that once made sense, but in this season no longer does. And the point isn't what it is. The point is whether it is life-giving, and that is for you to discern with honesty and with clarity and not muddled up by all the voices around us. So I want to leave you with just a very simple practice, something you can carry into 2026, into the new year without any pressure. And these are just 4 small invitations. 1 beautiful question, 1 beautiful boundary, 1 beautiful act of attention, and 1 beautiful daily ritual. Are you ready? Okay, here they are. 1 beautiful question. What am I being invited toward this season? And you can think of the season as 2026, or you can think of the season as these first couple months, whatever and however you want to define that. Check in with yourself. What am I being invited toward? 1 beautiful boundary. What quietly drains you that you're no longer willing to carry? Where do you need to set some boundaries so that you can walk into 2026 no longer sort of drained? And sometimes those drains are very small, but when we have a lot of them, we're drained. We're like leaking, like it's all over the place, right? So it might not be one big thing. It could be some small things. And then 1 beautiful act of attention. This is something you choose to truly notice each day. Light, music, a face, your breath, whatever it is for you. What is this 1 beautiful act of attention? And then finally, 1 beautiful daily ritual. Make this tiny, make it repeatable, and make it grounding. So for example, a cup of tea in the afternoon. That's usually when I like to have mine. Maybe it's your morning prayer or your daily walk. But don't make this like, I've got to walk for an hour. I mean, if you do that normally and that's easy for you, then absolutely. But if you're not in the habit of doing that, it needs to be tiny and it needs to be repeatable. So make it whatever you need to make it, a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk, whatever it is in the morning. It could just be a simple moment of stillness that lasts 20 seconds. Whatever can be tiny and repeatable, that's what I want you to choose. Why does it need to be small? Because small practices bypass resistance. And all of us have this experience especially when we're going into 2026, the new year, we're coming up with these new big things that we want to do. And a lot of the issue is when we make a jump to something that's too big, we may consciously want it, but unconsciously we're resisting. And so it's sort of like we need to, I don't like to trick, but I'm going to use the word trick. It's like we're tricking the nervous system by starting small, because in these small little things, our bodies, we begin to build trust. It's like we are retraining our nervous system. So you just start small. And also, it's more doable that way. Over time, these kinds of things, they reorient your life. And you might think, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Like these are such small, tiny things. And I promise you, just try it. In fact, I want to encourage you, whether you want to challenge yourself to, the next 2 weeks or maybe 30 days or whatever, write these things down. Again, I'm just going to repeat them one last time. One beautiful question. What am I being invited toward this season? One beautiful boundary. What quietly drains you that you're no longer willing to carry? One beautiful act of attention. What are you choosing to truly notice each day? And then last, one beautiful daily ritual, that tiny, repeatable act. These are the things, and I want you to practice this and see how you feel. I really want this episode to inspire and encourage you to set the tone for the year ahead. We don't need to necessarily make these big grand gestures, although again, if you feel excited about doing that and your body is like, yes, I'm excited, go for it. But in my experience, sometimes it's like biting off more than you can chew, right? Or what's the saying? Your eyes are bigger than your stomach, and you pile lots of stuff on your plate and then you can't finish it. Like sometimes we start the year off with that kind of energy. It's fine as long as you don't get discouraged, right? So don't think of this as a checklist. Think of this as a compass. You don't need to completely overhaul your life to live beautifully. You simply need to orient it toward what is good, what is true, and what gives you life. And if this resonates, we'll keep exploring this together because, like I said, this is the framework that I use not just for my life, but when I'm working one-on-one or even in groups with people to really take stock of how is it, how are they living their lives, and what is it that they want to get in any particular season of their life. This is something that we can unpack together just slowly and thoughtfully throughout the year. And I would love to hear any questions or thoughts you have. Like I said, this is not a deep dive, just a little introduction. So thank you for being here. I hope that you are feeling kind of dreamy and hope-filled for 2026. I know for a lot of people, 2025 felt like a lot. So let's start this new year with our dreams alive, hope restored, and a real recognition and awareness of the beauty in the life that we are already living so that we can orient towards that, shift our gaze towards that, and feel like we are living a beautiful life. And with that, I also want to share that I've created something that, again, is very gentle. It's very simple. And if you want sort of a more expanded way to support you, especially in the beginning of the year, again, you can do this any time of the year. So you could be listening to this in June, and you can still do this because there's never a bad time to reorient our life towards what is beautiful. But I have what I like to call sort of like a little toolkit. It's a variety of things that I put together, including a journal that has specific prompts, just like completely geared towards gifted women. There's also a training, there's a workbook, there's lots of different things in there. And I have a link in the show notes if you want to just check that out. It's very reasonable. You can do it in 30 days if you want. You can also stretch it out longer if you like, but it's what I like to call first steps to a beautiful life. And this episode sort of talks about a little bit of the framework and how I reorient. But if you're interested in doing a little bit more work on your own, just kind of like a self-paced, study, I encourage you to check out that link in the show notes. And until next time, keep flourishing, my friend. I can't wait to talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Power to Flourish podcast. I hope today's conversation left you feeling more seen, more supported, and more deeply connected to yourself. And if this episode resonated, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend? It's one of the best ways to help this work reach the women who need it most. You'll find show notes, links, and resources from today's episode at powertoflourish.com. And now just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not therapy, medical advice, or a substitute for professional support. And listening doesn't make me your therapist or doctor, though if you're looking for a coach, you know where to find me. All right, beautiful one, that's it for now. Until next time, trust yourself, honor your gifts, and keep flourishing.